Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Adi Achint. Guys, Ukraine is something which went off the news. I thought let's bring it back. उसको जरा वापस लेके आते हैं because there's something happening in Ukraine which will change Europe for times to come. General Sir has been kind enough, and General Prabdeep Singh, Namaskar, good evening, and welcome to the show, sir. He's been kind enough of taking us through the Ukraine war. Now's the time where I think the war will come to an end. On that note, sir, I'd leave you to give your opening remarks, and then I'd like to paint a small little picture of Europe that I see, and we'll take the discussion from there, sir.
Uh, Good evening and good to be back again, Adi. Yeah, we're looking at Ukraine, which had actually gone out of the radar. But the fact of the matter remains this entire chaos which has taken place uh, has started from Ukraine, right?
Yes,
And
it's all Ukraine.
it's all Ukraine. And Ukraine is the one which, as I had said, is going to change the face of the geopolitics and the narratives which are going to exist for for many years to come, decades to come, perhaps. So when we look at it, as you rightly said, it's time to end the war. But will the war end? Is what we got to be studying. We got to be seeing. We've heard about the stalemate having taken place,
Hmm.
already been announced by General Zelensky of the Ukrainian armed forces, and the Russians having denied that. And incidentally, even Zelensky said no, there's no kind of a stalemate. I mean, his government people have said there's no stalemate. The war continues. So there are dissensions between the military and the political parties. I mean, the political guys in Ukraine. As far the Russians are concerned, Russians are not even blinking an eye. They've said no stalemate. We are continuing with what we want to do. Uh, yeah, they're kind of happy with what they are doing. At the same time, we got to be a little cautious because I see Ukraine making a little bit of progress on the Kherson front, and that
Hmm.
worries me a little. And the Russians today, while they're trying to intercept and interdict all the movement which is taking place east of the river, uh, from a small foothold today, it has gathered to up to a battalion strength, which is down, come up on the eastern side. So that is something which needs the Russians need to watch out for, because slowly and slowly the Ukrainians are making progress, and that is where their main aim lies. I mean, they want to hit the land bridge and then go
Crimea.
in for Crimea. While that is very far away as far as distance is concerned, but then whatever said and done, today they are calling it a battle of inches. By inch, the Russians are actually, the correction, the Ukrainians are uh, inching, if I may put it that way. So that's something which amuses me, because the Russians are not making a very deliberate attempt on that side.
Hmm.
Their
They're
main
going
focus remains, yeah,
on.
their main focus remains towards Kharkiv, and subsequently maybe to Kiev, because that is the axis that had already always been spoken about. So what is happening today? The dynamics on the ground appear to be a stalemate, which actually are not a stalemate. There is progress by the Ukrainians, very small, but it is there. At the same time, there is progress by the Russians, again meager. Why not a full scale operation being launched, an offensive being launched and headed for Kharkiv? That we've discussed this earlier. They want to conserve their forces, perhaps for a better and a greater war if it emerges.
Plus, right now it's also the mucky
Notwithstanding
season, right?
what we see, yeah, the weather, of course, today, and till the end of winters, uh, until such time summer sets in, this is not the time for kind of a battle. But as I spoke last time also, it has become more of an infantry battle, and the infantry in groups, in small bodies, is still making a little headway here and there. After all, in the end of it all, it's the infantry which has to capture territory.
Hmm.
So that is one part. The weather and the climate, weather at this time of the year. But what we got to see is, a will the war end, and when will it end, and under what terms and conditions will it end? So this is what we are focusing on today, and I guess that's we'll talk about it as we go along. Now let's have the picture that you wanted to paint to me.
Huh. I mean, now when I look at Europe, like, and you very actually, I think about a couple of months ago, you painted this picture for us, and today I see that emerging. You know, Sir had put out a theory saying that, guys, the next battle is in the Arctic. Okay, so that is why Finland and Sweden were brought into NATO. Makes a lot of sense when you look at a map. Absolutely correct. Then you see Poland arming up, and Poland is now very antagonistic to Ukraine. They don't like them. वो तो मतलब डंडा मारने को तैयार है उसको. And Poland is building up as a back base. So I see the Central Europe, which is Germany, this, that, becoming pretty much lesser end in the priority, sir. But Russia ko दूसरी तरफ, if you look at it, sir, you've also got Russia stuck with two other battle situations on his borders. One is in the Caucasus, Azerbaijan, Armenia, which affects his Caspian Sea and all that. And second is in the Balkans with this Syria, Serbia, Kosovo, and all that entire thing that can explode. Is this the Americans trying to hedge the Russians and keep them in their place, so that they, get them there? They can concentrate on Israel and China at the same time. What is happening in this game, sir? Because there's small sparks everywhere in that region.
Yeah, what you said. Let's tackle the these two small wars which are taking place, or the I wouldn't say they are wars as such as of today. They're more of skirmishes and likely wars, uh,
Hmm.
to the extent that we can really think that the Russians have got fingered. This started many months back. This started much before Israel Gaza happened, right? So this was a tactics as it is adopted by the Americans and the West to ignite certain uh, sparks, whether it was Azerbaijan, or whether it was the in Serbia, Bosnia. No, these haven't affected the war in Ukraine. These sparks were ignited about 3 4 months back. If you remember, they died down and then they again being kind of revived. And there are always small threats which keep emerging that this is going to further expand. So, as far as Russia's attention being divided to the extent that they will be dissuaded from applying their forces into Ukraine, or not having adequate forces if Russia and China collude, that's not going to, in my opinion, that's not having an effect. That's one. So these wars would continue. Russia, as it is engaged in Syria, is still continue to do that. So all that will continue.
Even Africa is opened up a huge influence.
Africa, of course, we know the Wagners, etc., which are there and meddling around. So Russia is a big country. After all, Russia it has even before China came up to be what it was or what it is today. It was Russia which was holding on, against the West on its own alone. We didn't talk of China way back in the 60s or in the or in the 70s. We only talked about the USSR. Of course,
Hmm.
USSR split and whatever happened, but beyond that, also 1994 and beyond, it was Russia which stood on. So Russia is a big nation. Russia is strong. Russia has uh, been able to hold on to all these kind of pinpricks all over, and has been able to has the capability to tackle the Americans and the West. That's one. Of course, there are lots of news which say that they're also running short of manpower and they're going to conscript. I mean, they're also mobilizing and things like that. Well, that's always there. That mobilization aspect will always be there. But look at Ukraine. Ukraine today does not have the requisite manpower. They've called up women. They're, they've called up women to combat. The average age of a conscript in uh, Ukraine today, I'm told, is 43 years.
Yeah.
So if 43 years is the average age, then you can imagine 43. When you go up towards the senior level side, then you got people in the 70s and you got people down below. I mean, 16, 17-year-old kids also fighting. So what is the that is the kind of range. So the biggest worry, and if you recollect about 3 4 months back, also maybe more, I've been talking about this aspect. Where is the manpower?
Mm.
And today it is manifesting into that. You can supply them any amount of weapons.
Yeah, I mean,
43.9 billion, 43.9, 43.8 billion have already been provided. If that much money, yeah, 43.9 billion US dollars of military aid assistance has already been provided to Ukraine. And there's a bill waiting for 11.8 billion. I mean, Joe
some people
Biden
are saying
wants,
that is, yeah, some people are
yeah,
saying that is close to $120 billion.
yes, no, that's the total amount. But when it comes to the current talk which is going on is 11.8. Now, when you look at all this, you can provide anything and everything to them. But where's the
Mm.
manpower? Where's the trained manpower? So that's the Ukrainian part of it. Now let's go on to the Finland and Sweden and the Arctic. I always maintained this war was always about the Arctic region. This was an excuse to uh, preempt and prompt Finland, Sweden to kind of get into the fold. Because if the northern, if the Arctic region is not within the control of the West, of the Americans, it is the Russians which have the major say, and the Chinese are also getting into the fray over there. With Chinese presence in the Arctic, with Russian having the maximum, I would say the land which is adjacent to that, adjoining the sea, adjoining Arctic Ocean, you can imagine as to what is going to happen in times to come. With the climate change and the northern route getting opened up, the trade route being opened up, this that is definitely the shorter route to China and vice versa come into Europe. So it's going to become a major trade route, and if it becomes a major trade route, who controls that trade route? That's the whole game. And Arctic region is, I'm sure, the flavor of everybody's attention today. While we don't talk much about it. So if Europe has to remain relevant, then then Ukraine was important to be created. If the Americans had to have a major say in the Arctic Circle, the Americans' presence or the hold on Europe was extremely important. And this is precisely what is happening. Now, you mentioned Poland. Uh, I was listening to somebody today, and one of the podcasts by I think by Gardner. He the statement made in that podcast was that the American troops which are deployed in Poland have been withdrawn.
Hmm?
Yes,
That's
and those
interesting.
troops, yes, those and they because All that is part of the central command of the United States Armed Forces, the US. So the central command has pulled out all its resources from Poland, and that has been diverted to the Mediterranean.
That's interesting.
Now, yes. So if all that is going to happen, while we may say that Poland is, gearing up, and which is true, Poland is much more worried because that's the uh, supposedly the next in line, and that is why they have moved their troops over there. Now, isn't it very interesting and contradictory at the same time? Here we are talking about negotiations. Here we are talking about Zelensky making statements that Ukraine is sacrificing for itself, for the rest of the West, or the rest of Europe, because if you do not supply Ukraine with weapons and equipment, and if you can't stop the war at Ukraine, Russia will be sitting and gobbling, will be sitting next to your borders, and it will start gobbling more territory in Europe, more countries. So that's if that is it, uh, Poland has to remain worried, has to be
Yep.
worried. But
Mm.
at the same time, if troops have been withdrawn out of Poland, because when you look at the NATO forces, how they're deployed, the United States forces were only U.S. Army and Air Force were only deployed in Poland, because these areas, these bordering nations have been divided amongst countries. So they've got battle groups from each particular nation. So Poland had the maximum number of the United States troops, and if they have been taken away, Poland has actually got to be fending for itself. So there is definitely a need to negotiate, because if you don't, then the backup force which was supposed to be in Poland, if it has gone, then there is a little bit of a problem.
Mm.
So who's facing issues? I think the Americans are also facing issues as far as troops are concerned,
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
the eruption,
I think
with the,
we
with,
discussed this.
with the eruption of with the eruption of this Israeli, Hamas conflict.
We discussed this that both the powers, both the sides actually are stretching themselves beyond a certain boundary where they find themselves not being effective anywhere actually. Everybody is stretching
Yeah,
themselves. हर कोई हर जगह पे हाथ डालना चाह रहा है, and which is very interesting. Um, Sir, now my next question, I want to actually, go to Zelensky, and I want to play this like half 30-second, 45-second clip which is there, so that we can set the mood for a discussion on Zelensky. I mean, jokes apart, uh, let's listen to this and then we can actually discuss this.
Can't give us can't give us some financial support. Okay, okay, please give us a credit and we will give you back money.
I mean, that's pretty significant. If you can't give us money, okay, give us credit. We'll give you back money after the war is over.
so that's
Now,
the level of
that is,
frustration.
yeah, that is one part. Then I believe Zelensky and Zelensky are having issues because
Yeah.
after Zelensky gave that interview to The Economist saying that, "Bhai, this is a stalemate," his deputy blows himself up in his house or has been blown up in his house. He's dead. He's not deputy. He's like aide or whatever. He's dead. What's the game here, sir?
You know, the game here is very simple. That there, Zelensky is not a general. He's not. He cannot be the one who is dictating terms to the armed forces. And trust me, the armed forces will always listen to the political masters, but they will not expect or accept interference. Now, this is primarily the root cause of everything. while he's been rooting for Zelensky, has been rooting for a lot of equipment and making statements. The stalemate statement is also actually, if you look at it, it can be viewed as a statement being made to the economist to say, look, it's coming to a stalemate because you are not providing us equipment.
Would you also consider it as an upgrade for Ukraine?
Say again, as a
Upgrade of situation for Ukraine? Instead of calling it a complete loss, you say a stalemate.
yeah, you know that is, you're not talking about a complete loss. Obviously, it's not a complete loss. If they're making progress by a few inches, also it's not a loss, right? But what I'm trying to twist it to is that, look, it's just, while there is a rift between Zelensky and Zelensky is saying, while we are doing what we are doing, it's coming to a situation which is a stalemate because, now I'm just adding this, because you are not providing us adequate weaponry, right? It is also an acceptance of the fact that the Russian machinery is not going to stop. Russia is far superior. It is an acceptance of the fact that Russia is not going to be stopping. Russia's manufacturing capabilities, uh, I mean, they're going to be reaching by 2024, they're going to be producing 2 million rounds per year. And that is what the situation is. Now, if that is the kind of production which is taking place in Russia, and if manpower is not a constraint in Russia, this war can carry on for many, many years if Russia so desires. So, what happens in turn? It tires out the Americans, it tires out the West, which already that Ukraine fatigue seems to have set in. Now, Zelensky asking for money, well, he's going to continue asking for money because he's tasted blood. After all, he's got to make sure that, all the luxury that he can provide to his family, that pipeline remains open. So that's precisely what is happening. No money is going to come about. The Americans today have also realized that the more we give, nothing is going to achieve. Is going to be achieved because there's lack of manpower, there's lack of trained manpower, boots on ground cannot be put. The Russians have a better hold as far as this is concerned.
Hmm.
Now, talking about the deputy getting blown up, well, it's a very dramatic kind of a situation that has been painted. That it was playing with toys and suddenly he pulls out a pin. I don't know. I mean, I really
And a
cannot
grenade
say.
explodes.
When the grenade explodes,
Wow.
it reminds me of some of these some of the terrorists, when they are fighting, what they do is, in their pouch, they put a grenade and they remove the pin. Now I'll just tell you something very interesting. So in there, if all that harness that they wear, so in that pocket, they'll make sure that there is a grenade which is there, of which the pin has been taken out, and the lever is held in its place because of the tightness of the pocket. All right, but it's without the pin. So when they die, if they are killed and somebody tries to take out the grenade will bust and take at least 7 8 guys in that. So taking out a pin and keeping it in a pocket, so that tomorrow
That's
when
it.
somebody takes it out, they're going to take 3 4 5 guys. We've had an incident where they took in 13 guys. One grenade, 13 guys gone in one, because the pin had been taken out. and everybody was hovering over him and trying to see as to what it was, what all was he carrying. S- So these kind of situations are I'm talking about actual situations faced by
13
troops in
people, sir.
battle. 13 soldiers gone, one go. So we've had an incident like that. I
Whew.
wouldn't.
Is that why they kind of tie up the bodies? And we see this in the Israeli war also. They're tying up these guys' legs and then dragging them with these bulldozers out.
What happens is these terrorists have, when you look at their manuals also, if a terrorist dies, they will quickly booby trap him, will booby trap the body, because the moment you will lift the body, then he'll take two, three guys along with him. So that's the whole game behind this. And game is always a grenade without the pin, right? So this is an aside. I'm just trying to tell you. But somebody playing around with a grenade doesn't make sense to me, and purposely taking off the pin. And under what circumstances it happened, I think it's more of a kind of a framing of a situation. It's a story
Hmm.
being built around the student that it were toys and things like that, and an actual grenade was there, and the pin he took out while playing with child. I think it would more be more of a taking out the individual
Who was
for
doing
whatever
that, sir?
reason. So no, it could be anybody. It could be anybody. I mean, I would not delve much into it. It could be Zelensky's guys. It could be Zelensky's guys trying to. If it is Zelensky's guys, then Zelensky has kind of taken off one of his uh, officers who may be close to Zelensky, or feeding material to Zelensky, or it could be Zelensky wanting to tell Zelensky that tomorrow your fate is also going to be something similar like this if you're not going to go around. So it cannot be said, and I would not be able to make a comment on this.
How far do you think
So that
Zelensky is in charge of military operations, sir?
how far, I think he's not in charge at all, because on ground people are just fighting not for Zelensky, not for anybody. They're fighting for Ukraine, and you are to respect their patriotism. They're fighting for Ukraine, and they're fighting for survival at that particular point.
Yeah.
Because these guys, as we have read and as we have seen, what is happening is they're just picking up people from the streets, giving them a weapon, giving them 3 4 days or 5 days of training, and then pushing him into a battle. So what does he do? That poor person has to, now he's a soldier and he has to fight. He has to fight for his own self, and that is why the large amount of surrenders which are taking place, if you've seen, and because they've been forced to fight,
Yeah.
right? So that kind of a thing is not going to work out. These guys are untrained soldiers. They're being just left for to get slaughtered, and that is precisely what is happening. And Russia is being smart. It doesn't want to put in regular troops to the degree that it is required. So he's getting people from all over the world. And I mean, I'm quite amused because we have our neighbor Nepal, which has got sent. Uh, the boys have gone all the way to Russia for the lure of Russian citizenship, and they've also gone to fight in Ukraine with the Foreign Legion, and their money is the lure. So you have Nepalese fighting each other in this war. So things are very very strange and
Weird.
murky at the moment. Yeah, let's talk about
Very-
negotiations.
Yeah, what's happening there, sir? I mean, who's gonna get what? किसके हाथ में क्या बिल्ली फंसेगी? किसके हाथ
Uh,
में कुछ नहीं फंसेगा? And the main question is two sides. Uh, they can't take what Russia has taken back. They can't. वो नहीं हो सकता कि Russia is gonna walk back and all. It'll be a defeat. US can't recognize what Russia has taken. That'll be a defeat. So where does that go, sir? That's one. Second is, Putin suddenly mentioned that Ukraine in 1700s was basically Kiev and Chernokev, which is Kharkiv area. So, that just small rump sort of a thing. I saw some maps, not there, but it's here, somewhere that side. Now, I want to ask you, sir, is that the real thing that they're asking for? Is this just one of the steps on the final ground negotiation of the areas given by Putin in public? What is this happening?
Okay, what are Russians' aims or demands? Even let's say even before the war started and after the war started, what has Russia been primarily asking? That's what we've got to see, right? Russia has been seeking Ukrainian neutrality. We agree to that, right? So that means no NATO membership. Will that come for will that come through? I have my doubts at the moment. Never going to happen. EU membership they're talking about today. There was some talk that they've started the process of Ukraine getting into the EU. Anyway, so Russia wants first is neutral Ukraine. Second, recognition of Crimea being a part of Russia, which Crimea was taken in 2014. That is it.
Hmm.
Then Donbas region, which it has kind of captured, not to the full extent, but it will eventually capture. So they want an independent Donbas, which is of course the Russian speaking areas. So then is demilitarization of Ukraine. So I've come to 4 points. That is declaration of neutrality, then recognition of Crimea, then independence of Donbas, and demilitarization of Ukraine. And of course, the last one is that all these sanctions which have been put on Russia, they should get lifted. So these are the major demands that Russia would put forth.
Hmm.
Are they going to be acceptable? Neutrality is possible. Acceptance of Crimea is possible because Crimea, for the last so many years, has been part of. I mean, the Russians have had a hold on it.
Yeah, 1765. Yes, sir.
Donbas, Donbas region. We know that the root cause of this entire Ukrainian conflict has been the treatment of all the Russians
Russian speaking.
speaking population in the Donbas region by the Ukrainians, right? Demilitarization of Ukraine may not be possible, right? Or may not be agreed to. Sanctions, yes, they've had God knows how many 50 rounds of sanctions. 50 rounds of sanctions or sanctions, certain amount of sanctions which can get lifted in certain. Now, what one has heard that this group, what which is recently met, and that is called the Ukrainian Defense Contact Group. The Ukrainian Defense Contract Group, which was met last week, they've been talking about these negotiations, right? And Ukraine. Now, this has been reported by NBC, and somehow it has been retracted and denied and whatnot later on subsequently that no such proposals have been put forth. Now, that is where we're looking at the very fact that Ukrainians are running out of manpower. Any amount of equipment being provided is not going to go anywhere. There is fatigue which is set in Europe. The Ukrainian fatigue it is set up in Europe, and the
Yeah.
Americans today are also not very inclined towards supporting the war. So all that is there. Behind closed doors and in the meetings which have taken place, what has been kind of what will be acceptable to Ukraine when it comes to negotiation, while it has been denied later on, is that they may agree to parting off with certain territories, like the Donbas region can be, given away, Crimea can be given away. So ultimately, they will have to agree to this because Russians are not going to give it back. They're not going to they're not going to walk out of those areas and say, okay, we are sorry, we came into your territory, please take them back. That's not going to happen, right? So I guess that's it. So NATO membership can be a compromise by the Ukrainians, and the territorial gains made by Russia in the present circumstances, at least up to in the Donbas region, is something that the Russians and the Ukrainians may agree to. But will the West agree to this? Will the Russians want to agree to this? Is the
Will they
question.
trust the
I will say,
Ukrainians?
sorry,
Will they trust the Ukrainians, sir?
that's the point. That is one. Second, will they trust the Ukrainians? Will Ukrainians? Zelensky says nothing doing. I'm looking at the 10-point, peace plan that I have put forth, and the first plan is that Russia should vacate all the areas that have been captured. That's not going to happen, right? So the very first point it gets refuted, and not going to happen. So in my understanding of what is the fate of Ukraine is that this war will continue to linger on. These negotiations are not going to lead anywhere. Russia will want to prove a point. Now it has got an opportunity to tire out the West. It will continue to do so, and at
Give each
after
other
they
the
are
same
tired,
treatment.
after they are tired enough, that is the time it will make a it will go towards Kharkiv and beyond, and maybe to Kiev. So and the as I've always maintained, Russia would want to be in possession of all the areas east of the Dnieper River. So that is where, when you look at the north part of it, that's where Kiev and Kharkiv, would be there with the Ukrainians at the end, and Kiev may also have to get divided if that be the case. So the end game has to be splitting of Ukraine into two, east and west of Dnieper River, complete control of the Black Sea, and that would be the end game of Russia. And following which, anything short of that, Russia is not going to agree.
But the Americans will also
So
pull something from the Russians, na? साथ में ठीक है, we'll agree to all this. What the hell will you give us?
no, no, they will not. The Americans are not going. The Russians are not going to agree to all this. They are going to take it.
ठीक है, we can work on this. Sir, see, I mean, the point is, the Americans are also not going to sit quiet at the end of it. They will try and play a game or some twist somewhere. Will they say,
Okay, even
tell
if
the
it's a
Russians,
give and
okay,
take.
let's work together, but now you got to stay away from the rest of the nonsense which is happening Middle East and potentially in China as well. Would that be on the plate
Oh,
for the Russians?
no, I have my doubts on it, and Russians are not going to listen to them. The Russians will maybe nod their head, but they won't listen to them, and they will not
Hmm.
comply to what the Americans want. I mean, after all, the CTBT, withdrawal from CTBT, all these things are
That is the
actions which are
problem.
taking place. So, in my opinion, that's not going to happen at all. Those things are. If we think that that negotiations are going to take place to that extent, no. They will be limited to Ukraine, and Ukraine, as I said, the minimum that the Russians would expect are those 4 5 points that I just made. And as far as the Ukrainians are concerned, I think the only compromise they can make is on territory and not joining NATO, and which kind of meets the aims. No, the
It's going to be
point is
very. Hmm.
it. No, the point is, if you agree to this, if the
Yeah.
Ukrainians agree to it, after all, it is, what does it show? It shows that NATO is insignificant. It shows Russia is mighty. It shows that the Americans have failed to, despite having pumped in so much of money and manpower and effort, they have not made any gains. So the American power seems to would kind of appear to have dwindled. It will enhance or empower China more to get more aggressive, because the reactions that they are going to come in Taiwan and all, they'll be kind of weighing it in comparison. So the weakening of the US power to Europe having becoming redundant, correction, NATO having becoming redundant, and Europe having become poorer is going to be the end result of any negotiations which have taken which take place in which you know come to the end of a conflict. Let's
Let's
see.
take, sir.
Yeah,
I'm saying let's take some audience questions as well. There are loads of them that have come, and most importantly, I'll try and throw in a bit here and there as well wherever I feel comfortable. But guys, before that, you guys need to like the video, subscribe if you've not subscribed, and push out the word. We've crossed 100,000 followers yesterday, so that's a day of history that will go down. And most importantly, guys, as I always keep saying, just push out the word to people, like the video so that it spreads more. And if you can, please do help out the dev talks efforts. The QR code is up there, or you can use PayPal, which is there in the description, or uh, using your send super stickers or super chats options. Let's see what people have to say. Ranjit ji, thank you so much for becoming a member. There's another member that has Nabas Paramji. Thank you so much for becoming a member. Anmol Sharma, thank you so much. He says unknown gunmen, rest of differences within Pakistani army. Result of differences within Pakistani army. I believe one more chap has been ditching out today. So
yeah. This is something very interesting which is happening within Pakistan.
I must say, sir,
Unknown gunmen.
people keep asking me who's the unknown gunman. I say it's me. When I was traveling, there was no shootings. When I'm back in base, they're now back again. One by one, guys are going. It's me.
Yeah, lots of people.
Yeah, yeah. So, Dipankar you ask, how do you see Turkey's approach towards Europe once Ukraine conflict ceases, or say at least the level of heat goes down to some extent?
Yeah, now Turkey is becoming a major player as far as the geopolitics in Europe or even in the Middle East is concerned. And Turkey is a nation that you got to be watching out for. Turkey is kind of a pivot as far as NATO is concerned, because it's there yet not knowing the line. And whether it is the, what should I say, the Muslim Brotherhood, which is playing up in Europe, whether it is playing up in Israel, in Gaza, and all over the world. They are the leaders, so they kind of hold the switch, if I may just put it, and that is something which is very very dangerous for the rest of the world.
Hmm.
And Turkey's prominence uh, in the entire arena is coming to fore. It always was, but now it is becoming more and more prominent. And that is one nation which you've got to watch out for. It has a good industrial base, military industrial base. It has, I think, one of the largest drone manufacturing industries. It holds the key to the Muslim Brotherhood and all the uprisings which may are taking place, all the marches, anti-West or pro-Palestinian marches which are
Yeah,
taking
yeah.
place. Yeah. So all this, when you look at it, Turkey will continue to play a major role, and some that's a country that we really got to watch out for. With Europe going down, economically, and a large amount of protests which have taken place just shows the vulnerability of Europe as of today, and it'll have to be handled very, very carefully.
Carefully.
Is all I can say.
Vaman ji, thank you so much for your super sticker. Mm, okay, yeah, here we go. Ravi says, how much area is captured by Russia? How much area Russia wanted to capture and to pressurize Ukraine to come to the table to talk?
Yeah, it's got about 20% of the areas of Ukraine is already, part of the captured areas, and one cannot describe this in area terms. What the How do you pressurize Ukraine to come to the talking table? Russia is not interested in Ukraine coming to the talking table. No, that is the point. Russia will only want to come to the talking table on the terms that I just mentioned, and it is not the area which is going to happen. And today, Ukraine is not wanting to come to the talking table openly. These are all talks which are taking place at the backstage. And is Zelensky truly wanting to come to negotiations? Zelensky is not, whereas his military is definitely wanting to put an end to this war. So it cannot really be measured in terms of areas. It is Donbass plus. Today, 20% is in his control. Tomorrow, he's looking at, if he has to, he must have at least 50%. I would put it this way. At least the area east of the Dnieper River is what he would want to capture. Yeah.
Marathi Manus, he says, Adi, Russia never said we want all of Ukraine. They just don't want NATO on their borders and already have created buffer state around its borders. So technically, they have one already. Well,
I totally
Finland
agree.
is there on its border.
Yeah, Finland, very much on the border. Finland, in fact, that is what came as a surprise to the Russians because they never thought Finland would, so
Yeah.
quickly get absorbed, and that has kind of. But still, they are very confident of the fact that there's not going to be any kind of a conflict or conflagration between the Finnish and the Russians. So even now, they are quite comfortable with Finland, even though it may have joined NATO. But as far as the Ukrainians are concerned, there was always a dispute and there was always something in the air which kept bothering them. Yeah.
Rashmi ji asks, what are the chances of China invading Taiwan between the current chaos?
Well, this is anybody's guess, actually. Now, would China want to invade Taiwan? This is a question which, this one particular question, I think we can talk for hours and the world
Yeah,
can
yeah.
keep talking for hours on this. The moot point is, would China actually invade Taiwan? That is one. Two, while they keep practicing, I mean, the fact is that is one operation which is practiced on the eastern seaboard of China very regularly, and they have all the maritime forces in place. They have a fantastic navy, and they keep practicing the invasion of Taiwan, and then they have all these, you know, air movements towards Taiwan. They go into the across the median line. So all that continues. Will it actually do it? That's a question I really cannot answer because if it had to happen, it would have happened. But in my opinion, China would not want to carry out any invasion. It would want to absorb Taiwan uh, peacefully, and they would want to build up such a situation whereas Taiwan itself expresses its desire to be part of China, if I may just
Subversion.
put it this way.
Subversion would be
Yeah.
their tactic. I don't think they would want to go in as well. Yeah. Average middle class gamer, thank you so much. There is a saying: hard times create hard men create soft times create soft men. That's exactly the West right now, specifically the EU. They have not even realized that they have screwed big time. Interesting comment.
Yeah, good one. But I think Europe and the Americans and the West have quite very much realized that they have screwed up. But unfortunately, they don't seem to be learning to the extent that they should. Actually, especially Europe, because Europe today started looking inwards and looking at its economy and looking at, I mean, politically, when they look at it, they find themselves in a very precarious. The governments find themselves in a very precarious situation,
Precarious
and
position, yes.
that is something that the Europeans have learned, and that they've been led up to a situation which could have been avoided. And at the moment, there's no turning back, and they're hoping that it kind of stops. Yeah.
Naveen says Ukrainian army is asking 40 to 60 years women to join the army. Is Zelensky completely out of his mind, or Ukrainians who still don't want to give up?
No, no, Ukrainians, you see, there are a lot of protests which are taking place in Ukraine as with this regards to the conscription. And the average person, unfortunately, most of the men have either died in the battle or they have fled the borders. And what is left are only women. And this is kind of a desperate situation that Ukraine is. So when you say Zelensky is out of his mind, yes, definitely. Is it the Ukrainians who want to give up? No, the Ukrainians don't want to fight any longer.
Partha, he says, why USA is silent over the attacks over its assets on the bases in the Middle East? Are they waiting to disperse raisins at a wholesale rate? No,
Partha, no,
part
they
by
are
part they started
retaliating.
up. Hmm.
They are retaliating. They are retaliating. After all, they've also launched attacks on Syria, and it is just that they are not getting into a direct confrontation with Iran, and they're avoiding that. While the basis of the Iraqi resistance and all that have been attacked and been taken on off late. So they are reacting.
Interesting comments. Bharat says, Adiji, there might be some arrangement between Poland and Russia that Poland will increase its territory by some part of Ukraine and Russia will support that in action and keep mum. We have kind of
Yeah, this is
hinted that
this is
many a times.
yeah, we've been talking about it. This is the trifurcation theory that we keep talking about. And in the end of it all, yes, what you're saying is right. There would be Poland will take away some territory, or we'll see. We'll see as to how it develops.
So,
Now that the American forces have gone out of Poland, uh, I don't know. I've heard about it, and it may not be true, but I cannot really, with great conviction, talk about it. But
yeah.
if that be the case, then Poland would like to take a step back. Yeah.
As SG says, with the US and Russia stretching each other out, will China dare to go after Taiwan? I think the Taiwan part we've already answered. How do you look at the stretching part, sir?
You see, the Americans are not. Americans have stretched only, I would say, in terms of money and also in terms of equipment, which was lying, you know, unused or was a part of their third line or reserves. So the reserves may have got depleted, but beyond that, they haven't stretched themselves. As far as the Pacific Command is concerned, that those assets have not been wouldn't have been touched. What the assets which were touched were of Central Command, and those command today they are committed against are committed as a safeguard in the Middle East. So uh, they do have adequate forces. As far as Russia stretching is concerned, yes, Russia has stretched itself, uh, but it has also ramped up its production. So while they have spent about 10, like just as a figure, in the past nearly 2 years plus, they spent about what 10 million rounds
Hmm.
in this 624 days, not 2 years, but 1 year plus 624 days which have gone by. They spent 10 million RT shells or RT rounds, and now their production rate is going to be 2 million rounds per year. So they also fast making up. Plus, they've taken 1 million from rounds from North Korea.
Ji.
That's another interesting aspect, Adi, that I came across was that there is shortage of manpower in Russia to increase production. I'm not saying shortage of manpower for enrollment into the armed forces, but to boost up their production in the armament factories. You have people from North Korea who have labor has come in from North Korea to work in the factories in Russia. That is something which I came across and I found was something new. That there are North Koreans who are now working in the factories, Russian factories, manufacturing arms and ammunition. So this is something which is happening. So Russia also is has stretched itself, but is capable and is continuing to hold on and not affected to that extent that the West expected it to have got affected.
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
Yeah.
Bhattaji says, so people are saying, and I've heard on an Indian channel that Russia is not being able to achieve its objectives. How far is that true? Or Russia is trying to minimize their losses here?
I kind of do not expect that, you know, they're trying to minimize their losses. They don't want, why should they bang their head against something which is, as it is, tiring out the West? If with the same momentum and the same scale, if they're able to tire out the West, they're very happy doing that. And as far as achieving its objective, obviously, the special military operation objectives, which were initially set out, definitely have not been achieved. And we got to
Hmm.
accept it. And so the Russians accepted this fact. That's how they carried out a strategic retreat, and they limited their objectives to, if I may say, east of the river, or minimum that they're looking at is the Donbass region. Yeah.
Ronak says, regarding the outcome of one of the one of the possibilities is the bifurcation of Ukraine between Poland and Russia. But does this not defeat the purpose of Russia to have a buffer state between NATO and Russia?
A good point. I mean, you made. Now, will this bifurcation of Ukraine takes place or not is what we got to see. And a neutral buffer state is in the interest of Russia, and that is what it wants. But a situation may arise that even after having captured, after having reached a kind of an agreement or a negotiated agreement or a ceasefire, there is no guarantee that tomorrow Ukraine will not become a full-fledged NATO member.
Hmm.
So unless that guarantee is given, Russia is not going to stop the war. And whether it is tomorrow, it could be Poland's turn. You know that, right? So Poland is wary of this, and if it has to be this way, it will be this way.
SN says, USA deep state planted Zelensky through Kiev protests. What was their exact purpose? How it backfired so far? What are the current establishment's approach to the situation as of now? I think we've covered most of this, but just a roundup, sir.
Yeah, they planted Zelensky. Zelensky is playing still continues to play the clown. Uh, he's got adequate amount of backing from the US and the West. He's made a lot of money. The purpose of the West of the United States was solved. That Ukraine was going to become a part of NATO, and had the Russians not walked in, had the Russian threats been taken very seriously from before, this war would not have taken place. And Zelensky has played to the tune of the Americans. The result is in front of us. Whatever is happening is a fallout of all that. Yeah.
Vinay Singh says, is it that Russia wants to create a buffer zone between Russia and Ukraine? Jokersky has destroyed a beautiful country. That's an interesting name. I'm going to steal that from you, Vinay. Jokersky.
Yeah, it has not only destroyed a beautiful country, it's got thousands and thousands killed. It's destroyed a complete generation, or maybe the next generation too. There are no men, women involved. Most of them have fled. They've been made refugees. And if we think they're going to come back to Ukraine, I'm afraid so.
Chance
They're
nahi
not
hai.
going to come back to Ukraine. Ukraine has become, I don't know. Uh, and then the only thing that they're talking today and holding conferences are on reconstruction of Ukraine. So you can just imagine, with no manpower available, with nobody to live in Ukraine, this beautiful country destroyed is going to be reconstructed. For whom, I really do not know.
Gumnami Baba says, Ukraine and Moldova joining EU after the war.
Yeah.
EU, war ending pretty soon?
Uh, yes, we've been reading about Ukraine and Moldova being, invited, or the steps being initiated for absorbing them a part of EU. And war ending soon is what we've been discussing, and let's see what happens.
Indeed, sir.
And whether they will become a part of EU without the war ending is something that we got to watch out and see.
Without the war ending.
Yeah, because they've already started. Today they said that we've initiated the first steps to absorb Ukraine and Moldova into the EU taken place.
It's amazing. Guy who bans elections, bans any opposition party, closes down media outlets, is joining EU. Fair enough.
Yeah.
If by any chance Ukraine gives up his dream of joining NATO, Russia will stop the war and make amends with the West, or will there still be conflicts?
Yeah, that is the whole thing. I mean, will Ukraine keep up to its promise is the question. And yeah, in my understanding, Russia does not believe in this, and only once it's forced for negotiations due to circumstances, will it agree to it, and will always be wary of this aspect. Let's see.
JP General Sir, please update on the trifurcation of Ukraine you once mentioned weeks long ago. World's focus shifted to Israel Gaza war after that.
Let's do that next time. But just to give you this thing that Poland has got historical claims to the northern western part of Ukraine, and they have been threatening and making plans to walk into that particular area and take away their historical land. So Poland takes away certain portion, Russia takes south of Dnieper, and Ukraine is left. A small pocket of Ukraine is left and is made redundant. This is what ultimately may happen. And why will Poland come in? It will come under the excuse that Ukraine We do not want Russia to be sitting at our borders, or Russia to attempt to take over Poland. So what are they going to do? They are going to walk into Poland, into Ukraine, occupy territory, and create a so-called buffer between uh, their own country and Russia by having occupied Ukrainian territory, by
Hmm.
extending their border. So they are creating a cushion between their main Poland and Russia by extending their border and taking over territory of Ukraine. So this is what is going to happen, and it's the traditional area that they will have get it back.
Basically, everybody happy.
Yeah, everybody happy.
And the last question for the evening, sir. Anmol, thank you so much. How do you see Pakistan's upcoming elections?
Chaos is what I see. I only see chaos in Pakistan, and I see the Nawaz Sharif having come back, Shahbaz and all these guys. God knows, Imran Khan in jail. God knows where it's going to lead. So I see a lot of chaos. It's the it is the will of the Pakistan army which will prevail as always. Yeah.
Interesting, sir. I must say, today's been an interesting episode because I used to wonder when would be the day when we will start discussing about the closure of the Ukraine war. It always looked like it's something that is going to get kept on dragging on. But I guess those times are nearby where we will bid farewell to Zelensky from our lives, one way or the other. I don't want to, you know, send any unknown gunman his way, but I hope he's safe and sound. And but there is something very interesting, as you said, this war has changed the world, and the extension war which is happening in Israel today is going to further change the world. So it seems like World War III being played out in patches around the world and not all together.
Yeah. So let us hope like hell that these patches remain as patches and not get interlinked, because the moment they get interlinked, then there is a full-fledged war, and things get into trouble. So while the Middle East will now continue to burn for quite some time, uh, the Ukrainian war is on the ebb at the moment. But I guess nothing, as I stated, nothing's going to happen. No concrete result of this is going to come about till the US elections are held. So just be very clear about this. So the war will continue. Any negotiations, any ceasefire, any uh, deal which will take place will only take place after the United States elections. And
Okay, we'll take a
that's my
last
reading
one
of the
from JB
situation.
Pizza. He says, General sir, do you hold the view that Putin wants Kiev?
Not to hold it to, but to make a statement that I can reach Kiev if I want to. And he stated that already, that we can be in Kiev, and that will be a statement to be made, not to hold on to Kiev.
Awesome. A lot of you guys are asking about a podcast on Myanmar. Yes, I know it's an explosive situation. We'll try and get into that as soon as possible because there's a lot of conflicting information which is coming out in that region. I just want to be careful for things to kind of settle down before we actually get into something. But we'll try and do that in the next couple of days. Thank you, sir, for joining me.
Man,
It's been a
yeah,
pleasure and an honor to actually have you. This has been an interesting episode, I must say, and let's see how this game will open out. And probably next week, if you're up to it, we could actually have a chat on Myanmar. By the time I think things would come into some further focus.
yeah, we can
So
talk on Myanmar. Having been to Myanmar, having lived my life in the East.
I just remembered that's why I mentioned this, sir. So thank you so much. And I'll see you next week, sir.
Okay, right. Thank you
Jai
very
Hind.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, viewers. Thank you very much. See you next.
Yeah.